Hi and welcome back to the channel. This time I want to show you quick how to use Neo4j and the Neo4j driver from the command line. My initial thought was that we were using JShell. But when I tried it out, it seems a little bit cumbersome to do this. I decided now to use jbang as the foundation for our application. Let us jump to the code and see how we will use jbang with the Neo4j Java Driver. First things first, we have to get an installation of jbang. To do this, just head over to their GitHub page and look for the installation instructions. After you've done this, we can switch over to the terminal and just start right into creating the application. So going to the terminal and issuing the init command, but we will use the CLI template to have a little bit of foundation to work with. So we have now the application, and jbang gives us a lot of information. What we can do now, we can start the application just to see that everything will work out. So let's do this first. It's building the application for the first time. And then you can see the other command that we can execute to use jbang with an editor of our choice. So I will opt in for Visual Studio Code. And it will launch a new workspace for me in a temporary directory to work with the code. Looking at the application, we can see that we already, since we have used the CLI template, have CLI support. So we can pass options over and similar. The idea behind our application will be that we can query for a certain role and then get back the person, so the actor, who acted as this role within certain movies or one movie, but we will also find out which movies he also acted in. So that's typically what happens to me when I watch a movie and see, oh, I know that this person played a role in another movie, and I wanted to find out who is this person and in which movie did he or she perform. With this setting, we can then start to code. We are doing things the easy way and just say, we have one parameter that will be the role name to query for and similar. First things first, let's just say we have a role we will create this as a mandatory parameter. We can do this here later. So we will have maybe something like searching for the role. And let's see if at least this works. So we have this mandatory parameter, and let's say we want to look for Neo. So Keanu Reeves in the Matrix movies. It gives us information that we will then search for Neo. But we want to make most of the usage of jbang also, not only that it compiles this to the class file and executes the main method. It can also handle your dependencies. We want to connect to a Neo4j instance, so apparently we would need to have a Java driver on our class path. As always, the latest and greatest version. But the Java driver is a combination of blocking, so imperative, asynchronous, and reactive. In general, the Java driver itself brings all its dependency as shaded dependency with it, but there's an exclusion to the role, and that are the reactive streams library. As a conclusion, we would have to need this dependency also on our class path, although we don't use it. So after we've set this up, we can then ask jbang again to reopen the project in the editor of our choice, and it will automatically fetch the dependencies and put them into the metadata of our project setup. In this case, the Visual Studio setup. The beneficial thing we now have is that we can say we want to have a Neo4j driver, and it puts it into the completion list. So that's really nice to work with. So as always, we connect to the local instance we have running using the basic authentication. And get a driver instance. To have a graceful shutdown of our application, we have to close the driver as always. And from here on, we can go create again our session in the driver's resources block. And with this session, we're going for a retransaction. So as I said, we want to have an application where we can throw in some role name and get back the data about the person, about other roles she or he were playing in. To do this best, I decided to create a helper class to collect all the data. It's now called role info. Just paste it in here. We would then have something like transaction 1, some query, we will see this later, and set a parameter for our search role that takes in the argument we give to the application. The whole retransaction block should then return me the role informations and we are good to go. Of course, we would need to write a sophisticated query for this. I already prepared this query, and we can look into this for a second. We want to query for a certain person who acted in a movie with a certain role name. So we are looking at the relationship for the role name, but we want to exclude other movies the person is acting in where the person has the same role name. In the end, we collect all the data nicely with the titles, the other movie titles. So we have the titles where the person is playing with the role we were looking for. We have the other movies and the person, her or himself. We need to map this raw data and construct the role informations. We will then go ahead, stream the result, and call the mapping function with a record. And in the end, after we have mapped all of this to a list, after we collected the result, we just log the results. Now we can head over to the terminal again and execute our application. It's just for Neo. We see the result. We were looking for Neo. The actor is Keanu Reeves. He plays with the very same role in the matrix Revolutions, and the Matrix Reloaded. Other movies he played in are listed also here. That's great. But we can go further. You know, you do not want to execute this application every time with the jbang directive or similar. You might have noticed that the initialization also brings the jbang executable up here. So we were using a more Java stylish jbang here to execute the application. I can do this, of course, on the command line, make it executable, and then call the very same application. But there's more you can do. You can also compile this natively. Given that you have GraalVM installed on your machine and also the native image tool, you can read about this in the description below. jbang can compile this natively. So we put in the native flag for our application and call it directly. What jbang does all the time is to compile to bytecode, cache it, and then execute this very same bytecode again. It does not recompile if there are no changes. The same thing applies for native compilation. You won't get an executable within the same directory or similar, but it will just create an executable, store this in its very own cache, and then call this executable again and again for the native flag. So only the first time it needs to do this whole compilation. So after the compilation, you can see that it executes the very same code. We got our results back, and when we call this again, jbang will go to its very own cache and gets the binary out there. There is no binary stored within this path, assuming, for example, that you have just Java sources there. It did not want to mess up with this. If you make any changes to the program, you have to recompile it again natively. If you're interested in where your application is that gets executed in the cache, you can go to the jbang directory, call the cache, and then the jar files. And you can see there is this executable. So let's say we execute this directly with, for example, something else. So we take the character of Tom Hanks, and you can see that we got Dr. Robert Langdon, Tom Hanks, played this in the Da Vinci Code, and all the other movies Tom Hanks played in with. This is all for now. Try jbang out, try Neo4j out, and have fun coding. See you next time. I hope you had fun. Bye.